fellow webheads, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and today we are together to look at the Amazing Spider-Man number 56. Thank you very much for checking out the video today, for everybody who's subscribed to the channel, and everybody that's following along with this video series. Again, can't do it without you, so thank you all so much for your support. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that right now. It's free to subscribe to the channel. You just click that button, and it helps me a ton in our push to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. Right now, we're making great progress, but we need everybody's help. If you do subscribe to the channel, you will make yourself eligible to win 2 pieces of original artwork by me. Let me show you what those are. We have first, of course, because we're talking about Spider-Man today, we have our original 11 by 17 hand-drawn Spider-Man illustration by yours truly. The person that we pick, the random subscriber that we choose when we hit 1,000, will win this for free. There's no cost to participate. And the other one is the Incredible Hulk. So if you follow this channel and you subscribe, you'll also see every Wednesday I have a new Hulk video where we're doing the same thing, where I'm looking through each issue of the Incredible Hulk and reviewing the artwork that it took to put that story together. So you can win this Incredible Hulk picture as well. Both of these will go to one lucky subscriber when we get to 1,000 subscribers. So click that button, join in, and you could win some original artwork. The other thing you'll want to do is think about checking the notify bell, the notify you when new videos come out, because the other thing that I've done and plan on doing again is a free sketch session, a live stream for subscribers. So if you're a subscriber, you can participate, you can put in a suggestion for a character, and if I pick your suggestion, you get that piece of artwork, again, 100% free just by being a subscriber to the channel. So subscribe, sign up, join in, and participate. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So we are about to kick off with Amazing Spider-Man number 56. This is the end, little spoiler, of this Doc Ock story arc. So if this is your first video, think about going back and looking at the playlist that we have, because this has been like I think a 4-issue story arc with the return of Dr. Octopus. And so you'll see how that has been going. So without further ado, let's get into the comic together. We're going to cut over and check it out. Okay, so this is the cover to the Amazing Spider-Man number 56. This is a great cover. Of course, the story is written by Stan Lee, drawn by John Romita Sr., and inked by Mike Esposito. So it's the continuing creative team on the book. And this is a very good cover. It sells the premise, right? So again, just a quick recap for anybody who either hasn't seen the previous issues or has forgotten. So Doc Ock has come back. He has stolen a device called a nullifier. So it's a military device. It's supposed to disrupt missile guidance systems. He has been able to use it to disrupt anything and everything, including Spider-Man's memories. So he, through a series of events, Doc Ock, traumatized Aunt May by becoming a boarder or a renter in her home, and then he and Spider-Man have a fight, and that shocks Aunt May. And so Spider-Man is incredibly angry and is trying to chase down Dr. Octopus. This is his whole reason for existing at this moment, is to get back at Dr. Octopus. Again, Dr. Octopus has stolen this nullifier, and he takes it to Stark Industries, or Stark Enterprises, I guess. Tries to take over there, and Spidey arrives. Doc Ock turns the nullifier on Doc Ock, or Doc Ock turns the nullifier on Spider-Man, and it's, for whatever reason, disrupts his memory, because the nullifier does whatever the nullifier does. So now, immediately, Doc Ock has used that and convinces Spider-Man that without his memory, he and Doc Ock are in league together, and that so Doc Ock is in charge and Spidey's his henchman. And this is where we start with this story. Great big figures to really sell the premise. The newspaper in the back with Spidey joins Doc Ock. The white of the paper, the yellow of the background really helps pop these figures. Great cover. It's the kind of thing you're going to pick up and go, okay, what's happening? So excellent there. Not really much to say other than good cover. I always say this with every video. This is a scanned PDF copy of the original comic. So that's why you see inside the cover, you see these original ads. All the original page turns are there. All the ads from 1968. So we are into 1968 now with the book. And so it's going to look the way it did. The original printing, color, all that kind of stuff, which personally I really enjoy seeing. And I think there's a lot of folks who are starting to enjoy that sort of retro comic look. And we're even starting to see some people coming back and printing new comics on newsprint just for the experience. So splash page, picking right up into the story. Spidey is confused. He doesn't know who he is, but Dr. Octopus is taking advantage of the situation and just sort of rushing him through stuff into stealing. Well, he's already stolen the nullifier, but now loading it back up into his van to take off before the police arrive. Perfectly fine. Good. Sets the background. Takes us again right back into the previous issue. We've got the henchman, the van, all that kind of stuff. Good splash page. Now they're inside the van here. There are great camera angles in this issue throughout. These two pages are a good example of that. Again, just to reiterate one more time, the camera, when I say camera, we think about like a film camera or a video camera. And what the person who's running that camera, that person is the eyes of the viewer. So to keep things interesting, if you just have everything like me here, I'm sitting at a desk, I have a stationary camera, it doesn't move. If I wanted to make things more interesting, every once in a while, I might cut to another camera. I could cut and edit and have the camera up above looking down at me while I talk, or down low to look up for dramatic effect. These are all things that we do in film and video when it comes to creating drama with the position of the viewer in relation to what they're seeing. Obviously, with comics, we don't move a camera. We change the illustration. The reader is stationary, but we change that illustration so that it looks like the eyes are the camera, and they're changing position to see different things, and again, create drama in the story. So these are a great example of doing that. We start here inside the van, and there is a very simple kind of one-point perspective. There's not a lot to sell it, but you see some of these machinery, the lines all kind of point forward towards the front of the vehicle where this the driver is. Same here, these parallel lines all kind of point forward to that space. By using a one-point perspective, that means all the lines would vanish to this one single point way off in the distance. Everything goes that way. It's the simplest form of perspective that you can use, but it creates an enclosed feeling because everything is vanishing to this one itty-bitty little point. Normally, your perspective is 2-point or 3-point as things kind of go out. So you think about the corner of a building, they would go out off to the distance and shrink as they go off in either direction. Also up as it goes up in the sky. That's 2-point, that's 3-point. And now this is single, which creates a funneling effect in the image. And again, creates a sense of enclosure. We're inside of a small van with these figures and all this equipment. Of course, the figures are great. Doc Ock is looking crazy and just unhinged, while Spidey is trying to collect himself and figure out what is happening. Then we cut to the outside. We see the environment. They're driving and the police are coming. So that changing the view to the outside helps set up the premise of what's going on. Because if all of a sudden there's just a police car there, we don't know where it came from. Then we cut to the driver and the nice framing of the driver in the front, Doc Ock in the little window in the back. We set up the little window between the two parts of the van. So that's a nice change there. And then we see Doc Ock looking out and seeing the police car. Again, it's nice to use things in the real close foreground, like Dr. Octopus's face and his arm, to frame the police car in the background, making a U-turn to chase him. and then they use the nullifier to disrupt the car, because again, the nullifier does what the nullifier does, which is anything you want it to do. But again, moving the camera, every panel is different, a different angle, a different position. And now we cut back, the nullifier is starting to break down. You have Doc Ock's face with the steam in the foreground, Spidey behind, so we're creating levels of depth in the illustration by having things overlap each other. That is an excellent use of that overlapping in a small panel to create depth. And then we cut back, and now Spidey is that large foreground framing device as he's thinking, and we see Doc Ock working on the nullifier because he has to fix it. And then again, we cut to an outside view of the van pulling up on what Doc Ock says is his hilltop retreat, he calls it. So he's got this house out in the woods with a gate and stuff where they can go hide. So there are some story elements here that I am a little not confused on, but I go, this doesn't make sense. And it makes me wonder how often Stan, from stories and things I've heard, I don't think he did it frequently, which is, I don't think that Stan went back often and referenced past issues to necessarily make sure that his continuity was 100%. So here's what I mean by this. So so Doc Ock tries to steal the nullifier to start with. Then the military decides, we're going to move it to Stark Enterprises, to their facility. So they get a convoy. They're going to take it to Stark Labs. Doc Ock steals it. Once he steals it, he makes it he modifies it to be a handheld weapon, and then he takes it to Stark and Labs because he's going to take over Stark Labs. But the nullifier was already going to be there. Why wouldn't you just steal it when it's there? Which makes no sense. You took it exactly where you wanted it. And then once he defeats Spider-Man, instead of continuing to take over the lab, which seemed to be his goal in the first place, now he runs away. Why wouldn't you make a stand at the labs, right? What was the point of bringing it to the labs if you defeat Spider-Man? The nullifier is working fine at that point, and then the police are coming, and now he's running away. I don't understand. And then they go to this hilltop place. Okay, so in the beginning of this whole story arc, Doc Ock returns. Spider-Man and he fight over the nullifier, and Doc Ock is like, the heat is on. I gotta find a place to hide where nobody will be able to find me. So your classic villain underground lair is no good. The underwater one he used has been destroyed. He needs a place to hole up where nobody will look. So he finds an ad in the paper by an old lady looking for someone to rent a room. And he's like, I'll go live with the old lady. Nobody will look for me here. The whole time he had this place. He had a hilltop manor with a gate and a wall in the woods where it's apparently not connected to him in any way. Nobody knows where it is. Why didn't he just go there in the first place? I understand the story is to get Aunt May involved, which enrages Peter, but Spidey would have gone after Doc Ock whether he was at Aunt May's or not. So I don't understand the whole premise of that. I feel like I said, I think sometimes the details of what happened in previous issues sometimes just got a little lost in the storytelling. So that's my major story comment on this issue. We'll continue, but so far great. I love everything so far. The art has been terrific. Like I said, all the camera views are awesome. I love the close-up of Spidey. It's really, really solid. This art team of John Romita and Mike Esposito have really now synced up extremely well to where we're seeing great consistency with how Spidey's depicted. The line work is awesome. The ink work is great. Again, they're really hitting their stride. So Doc Ock is working on this. Spidey is still, not sure what's happening. He's questioning Doctor Octopus. They need this special isotope, some radioactive isotope to fix the nullifier, and he tells Spidey to steal it for him because Doc Ock's in charge. Spidey doesn't understand what his spider sense means because he doesn't know. And then Doc Ock tells him to unmask. Now, Doc Ock has seen Peter, and if he unmasks, he'll know who he is. I always like scenes where you see Peter starting to pull the mask up. Because when it's drawn, it's seamless. We know it kind of comes down to the neck and manages to just, the seam disappears. In the movies, you see it seemed to be from the behind, like there was a seam behind, and they kind of pull it this way. We've seen him pull it off like it's a stocking cap and it pops off his head, and here he's rolling it up his chin. I always think it's cool because it does add, from basically Spider-Man is just for lack of a better term, he's just a naked figure with a drawn on costume, right? There's no seams, there's no thread, there's no zippers, buttons, straps, anything like that. So whenever you see something that brings it into a little bit of reality, sometimes he pulls up his the shirt part, if you will, at the belt, at that because he's got his utility belt with his web cartridges, or he'll pull, you have to pull his sleeve down to reload his web shooters or something like that. I like that added element that it reminds you it's not just a figure, it is supposed to be somebody in it. It's cloth, it's a costume on him. So I always like that. This is great. The panel 2 here, this is terrific action of Doc Ock, trying to bully Spider-Man around. He's the boss. I give the orders. If you don't follow my orders and go steal this stuff, I'm going to, rough you up. And Spidey's had enough. He doesn't know why, but he's following his instincts, and he lashes out at Dr. Octopus. Now, the thing about this is, theoretically, panel 1 to 2 breaks what's called the 180 rule. So what that means is we have a line that runs through our figures, right? That runs directly between them. So imagine they're standing on a line that runs right in between their feet, right here. And so we can be on one side of that line, or we can be on the other side of that line. But when we jump from one to the other, it can be confusing, because what it means is right now, Spidey is on the left and Doc Ock is on the right. This is Doc Ock's left arm. His right fist is up. Now, when Spidey jumps, the camera has moved from the left over to the other side, broken the 180 rule, and now we're on the other side, and Spidey's moving in the wrong direction. He should be leaping from left to right. Now he's leaping from right to left. It's not a big deal, but it can sometimes be confusing depending on the story and the visual elements that are going on. So it's something you want to try to avoid if you can. However, here I understand the reason for it. And that is from here, from 1, the arms of Doc Ock, which are up in the air, and the background is leading your eye to panel 2. This motion coming from top right to bottom left moves your eye down to panel 3. So John Romita is using this as a mechanism to move the reader's eye in the correct pattern that you want, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. If you flipped it around and had Spidey jumping from the top left to the bottom right, your eye would flow that way, and now it's much harder to pull the reader back to panel 3. And then you can see in 3, as Doc Ock punches Spider-Man with his arms and his body spins backwards, which that is a great reaction shot, by the way. I put that note in here. I love this body motion of being struck by the arms as he's bending backwards. It's terrific. Leads us right to panel 4 with Spidey, and then to this arm back to Doc Ock. So overall, I understand why you would flip that in between panel 1 and 2 from one side of the screen or one side of the set or whatever you want to call it to the other side. It just becomes odd in that you're going from left to right, right to left. Now Spidey's on the right again. Now he's back on the left. So we flipped and then flipped back. So it's just something to be aware of. It can be, again, in this sequence, I don't have any problems following the order of the panels, the action that's happening. I understand what's happening. But sometimes, I just talked about moving the camera around into different views is great for drama. Sometimes you can move it too fast when you have the exact same sort of beat to beat space. And it can become visually confusing for readers. So just something to watch out for if you are a comic maker yourself. And now Spidey is enraged, and Doc Ock is trying to talk him down that things are getting out of hand. But you can see, right? So now Spidey's on the left. This is Doc Ock's left hand. And now he's facing the same direction. So, okay, we're good. That's fine. Let's see here. Doc Ock is going to send Spidey to a military base to steal this isotope and gives him a map because he doesn't remember anything. So he doesn't know where it is. And then we cut. I've talked about this a bunch. I do not like this. John Romita does it all the time. He does it in the next page as well. The last panel is often what he uses as like a scene change. So Spidey swings off, and then now we're going to cut to what's going on with Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn, Aunt May, all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But being the last panel on a page that is a whole sequence of Doc Ock and Spider-Man makes it a little confusing. Again, we understand, like, Spidey's swinging off here, and it appears to be nighttime. However, here it appears to be daytime. So is this the next day? It says a short time later. Maybe it really is the next day. Maybe it's the next morning. I don't know. But these two scenes don't go together, but they're from one panel to the next. This would be better setting up your scene on the next page. When you turn and go from page to page, that's the best place to put your scene changes. So this next scene has all of Peter's family and friends kind of trying to wonder where he is. Nobody's heard from him in a while. They assume he's trying to get pictures of Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man. And now we cut to this military police, etc., talking about what are they going to do to get the nullifier back. And again, it's not a great scene because if you're skimming, if you're reading, whatever, you miss the details of the little narration here. That it's at City Hall. All of a sudden, you're like, wait, are these people in the next room? How do they relate to Aunt May and Mrs. Watson and stuff like that? So again, this would be better on a page turn than it would be the last panel of a page. So your scene changes should almost always be on a new page. That way it's a clean break. It's like that coming back from a commercial in a TV show. So drives me crazy. John Romita does it all the time. He is a master. Who am I to say it's wrong? It's just something that bugs me. And then I just put here, there's some story stuff. The art is great. It's the people look terrific. For talking heads, it's very, very good. Peter is still mad because Peter's not around all the time. And it's like, okay, but I get it, he's your roommate, but I didn't think he was supposed to be, you guys are supposed to be locked at the hip, but I guess Harry's taking it personally. Again, just setting up some animosity between Harry Osborn and Peter Parker. They're friends, but there's tension. Again, I know if you all know, you know. We'll see that coming to the foreground. We're starting to see the definitive, what I call the definitive Gwen Stacy design here. So the long blonde hair, the bangs, the black headband, and the black shirt. This is kind of, when I think of Gwen Stacy, the jacket may be different, the skirt may be different, but when you think about what she looks like, the long blonde hair, the headband, the bangs, and the black shirt underneath, is to me the definitive Gwen Stacy look, and that seems to be finally solidifying here. Mary Jane shows up and of course is completely clueless. Um, you know, acting like she, Gwen asks if she's seen Peter, and she's like, I'm not going to tell you. We're, like, we're competition, like Macy's and Gimbals, like a couple of clothing stores. Just vapid and clueless, which is a real shame because Mary Jane is a much better character. We'll see that over time, but these early days, man, is she is as shallow as a puddle, which makes me like Gwen Stacy even more. Now we cut to this meeting. We've got city officials, police, etc., and the military trying to figure out how they're going to get the nullifier back. And we are introduced to the first time to Captain Stacy. So I believe it's Captain George Stacy. This is Gwen Stacy's dad, who is at this time apparently a retired police captain, a New York City police captain that has come out of retirement to participate and help. So this is the first appearance of Captain Stacy. And I just made a note and I said, why is everyone's family old? Like, Gwen is maybe 20. Why is her dad already retired and using a cane? Like, why isn't her dad like 40? I mean, Peter, I get it. Like, everybody's family old. Gwen is like 19 or 20 and her dad's coming out of retirement and he looks as old as Aunt May. Aunt May, this is a thing that always bothered me too. Obviously, Peter, his parents have to be younger than Aunt May. That can't be his mom or dad's. Well, let me think. I'm trying to remember. His Aunt May is not his blood aunt because she married Ben Parker. So this would have been Uncle Ben would have been Peter's dad's uncle, meaning it's his great aunt and uncle. But I know most people, I never referred to my great aunt and uncle as that. I just referred to them as aunt so-and-so or uncle so-and-so. I'm assuming that that's what it is, but it's never explicitly explained because otherwise the age discrepancy just doesn't make sense. But why is everybody's family old? Mary Jane's aunt is as old as Aunt May. Why does everybody have old family? Crazy. So let's get back to the artwork though. Spidey's swinging pose here is awesome. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit. I really like this pose. Again, this is where I'm saying like Mike Esposito and John Romita are into a great vibe here when it comes to their art. Very subtle, very simple stuff. Not a huge panel. Nice twist of the body to make it exciting. This is interesting. I just noticed this. In this case, he's only using one finger to trigger his web shooters, right? We think of the Spidey. We all know Stan Lee did it a million times. The Spidey thing is this, right? It's two fingers into the palm to do the webbing. Here it's only one. I don't know why. Interesting choice. But the subtle shadow under the foot and the leg is nice. The hatching here to show the gradation from the light into a dark shadow, but not completely black, is very nice. Like I said, the twist of the figure is good. Head, it's a great pose. Very, very simple. You could take this same pose, blow it up, add tons and tons of rendering detail, all that kind of stuff, and it would make a great shirt or cover or something like that because the pose is just that good and dynamic. So really good stuff there. And again, these guys are really knocking it out of the park when it comes to their depiction of Spidey. So there we go. So now he's got to sneak into a military base and he uses the old, this came out first, but the old, I call it the Indiana Jones, right? He's going to sneak underneath the vehicle, ride in to the base and then sneak out. I like the shadows. There's a lot of shadows here because he's sneaking in. I understand this. So the bottom of the missile is shadowed, which makes sense. I would have liked to have seen a shadowed Spider-Man here. Maybe, I know it's very small, but maybe do a little bit of an outline around him to sort of show where he is, or just sort of show the instead of him being in full display visually, maybe have a little bit of Spidey underneath, and the word balloons would tell you that it's him. Nice shadow here, shadow on the face and stuff as he's leaping away and getting in. Great, again, 1 point perspective. So that tunnel that he's crawling, the air vent he's crawling down, he's coming towards us. Everything, all the lines point up to a single point that's a million miles away behind him in space. So again, it makes it feel enclosed. So that's a great use of that 1 point perspective there. And all the line work is very, very nice. Again, remember now, most of the inkers at this time, I'm assuming Mike Esposito was the same way. I don't have any knowledge to say one way or the other. Most folks would have been using brushes. Brushes are great for organic forms like Spidey, because you're just following nice form. It's soft lines. It's organic. When you have these hard parallel lines like this, if it's still brush, now they're having to use sort of a ruler or a triangle or a square, something with an edge, and then doing straight lines that are mostly parallel. They're off a little, but there's some that are really close. That's really hard to do with a brush and keep that line consistency. It could be some kind of a pen here, but again, for the most part, my understanding was most of the inkers at this time, at this era, would have been brush work. That's a lot of line work with a brush, and it's very, very nice. So Spidey's going to break in. He does quite easily. Now he has to escape. Like I said, I just like the sequence is really good. It shows off, what Spidey can do, whether it's his wall crawling ability, his strength, his flexibility, all that kind of stuff is great. Now he's sneaking off again, more shadowing, which I think is really good. Now, this I noted on this page and another couple pages. I said, to me, all of a sudden, things are muddy. Let me explain what I mean by muddy. So I'm going to zoom in here. So when you look at this page, all of a sudden, these ink lines are really, really dark and really, really thick. And you notice like this, like the supposed to be the firing of the gun. Like it's supposed to be two separate lines with some color in there, but it kind of, the black is almost bleeding together in the middle there. This is hatching to show Spidey's shadow, and I think it's supposed to be more hatching than there is. It looks very dark. Again, almost like the black line work is bleeding a little. And then in Spidey's face here, there's supposed to be some area to help separate his face from the body and the shadow there. This arm is very weird and blobby. Up close is fine, but even here, feels like there's a little bleed on this dark line at the bottom of the hand. Stuff like that. So that's what I call muddy. You can really see it, like, again, here's some of this. This is a fine figure of Spidey jumping through the glass. I think it's really good. They did do some overlapping of the glass, little bits in front of Spidey to let you know he's breaking through it towards us as opposed to the other way. So that's a nice touch. That's important to note. But again, the rendering on Spidey here, these are supposed to be individual little hash marks or little feathering from the dark to the light. But because the inks got muddy or bled, it just looks like more kind of blob. Now, that could be the ink. That could be the way it was inked. Maybe it wasn't. It was inked fast, or there was a problem with the paper on this particular page or something. Who knows? But my guess is it's probably a printing error, because it doesn't happen on every page, and we're not seeing it this issue consistently through. So my guess is that when they printed it, somehow the black ink may be overprinted. Two quick things I also wanted to point out that I like. One is a great coloring decision. The other one is a mistake. So here, as he webs up the soldiers in these two panels, you have the web lines. These are just inked, netting lines, the way that Spidey's webbing is drawn. But then you have these white lines where his webbing overlaps the shadows on the soldiers. And I think that is a terrific decision. Would have been hard to ink the little squares, so my guess is this was something that went over later. It's either white paint over the top, or again, I've talked about it, they could scratch off, so you can actually take a razor and scratch the ink off the page and leave the white paper underneath. So it could have been something like that. But they did it on both panels here where the soldiers are shadowed and webbed up. I think that's a terrific touch, and I really, really like it. It's a subtle little thing to note. If they hadn't done it, you wouldn't have noticed. But by doing it, it makes all the difference and really takes it from a good illustration to a great illustration. Now, the next one here, so that was, I said it was coloring. It's really more of inking, but here we see Spidey has broken through the glass. Some of the glass is blue, some of the glass is white, and what you don't notice at first is this thing right here because it's colored the same as the glass shards in the background. This is the map. So he's had this map stuck to his back that Doc Ock gave him to show him the route to get to the base. As he breaks through the window, the map falls off. And that becomes a big story point because later he realizes, oh, it fell off. He leaves it. And then that gives the military the position of where Doc Ock's hideout is. So there we go. But if you didn't notice it, you'd see it here because he mentions it. Oh, I dropped it. But you don't see, like, why? Why did it get dropped? Oh, because it broke off or ripped off when he crashed through the window. And that's where this needed to be colored differently. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, looking at my notes. JJJ rant is great. Oh yeah. So he's going crazy. What's happening? He can't find out any information from his son because it's classified. He wants the story. He wants Parker. Maybe Parker can get him a lead on Spider-Man, and they're like, nobody sees him. And finally, Betty kind of stands up to JJ in a nice way where she's like, hey, I mean, listen, the guy's basically freelance photographer. If you paid him a salary, he'd be available to you when you wanted. And Robbie Robertson agrees, and he's like, yeah, okay, fine. You're right, but it still doesn't mean I'm not mad. And his cigar puffs out, and he shakes his fist, and it's just classic J. Jonah Jameson. I really liked it. And he finally comes out. The whole thing is a communist plot to drive him crazy, which I think is hilarious. So nice little bit there with J. Jonah Jameson, what's happening, and his kookiness as a character. And then here, really good. Of all the things I'm going to point out here, I'm going to talk about the foliage. So you're like, Jerry, we're here to look at a Spider-Man comic with Dr. Octopus, Spider-Man, and a henchman, and you want to talk about the foliage? I do. And here's why. As new or newer artists, I always say younger, but newer artists, as you're starting to draw things, you have to set up your environment. And at some point, you're going to draw things like trees and bushes. And it's important that you note that not all trees and bushes are the same, and that you need to understand the difference between how to draw a tree like a kid with like what we call lollipop tree, where it's the little round circular leaf part on top and then a little stick for the trunk. That's not how it goes. So here, this is clearly a pine tree. And what you do is you've got this trunk, which is great. You pick your light source. The light's coming from the left to the right. So one side is dark. You can see the texture on the trunk is nice. You have branches that come out. The branches come out in all directions. It's not just a flat like this and the branches come to the side. Some come towards you, some go away from you, some are they're going to overlap each other, which we have here, which is great. Then at the top, you have a general shape. So depending on how close you are, yes, trees and leaves or needles, whatever, have a general shape to them, but you want to define the edges of them with the specific kind of tree it is. So if it's an oak tree, that's going to have a different shape than a pine tree, which is going to have a different shape than, say, a palm tree. So just, it's important to note and look at your environment, look around you, take note when you're driving down the road, or you're mowing the lawn, or walking your dog, or whatever, look at the things around you and note how, like, what are the shapes of the leaves on different kinds of bushes? What does grass look like when it's long versus short? Things like that, because you will need to draw them if you want to be a comic artist. All those things exist in the environments around comics. So this is really nice. It's a general shape. You have a little bit of shape or texture here to show where all the leaves are together and kind of overlapping and stuff. And then on the edges, you have the needle kind of shape that helps define that these are pine trees as opposed to, like I said, oak or elm or birch trees or whatever. So really, really nice. The other thing about your foliage is there's going to be a lot of shadows. You're going to see that outside kind of shape where the light catches it, but inside there's less and less light the deeper you go in, whether that's branches on a tree towards the trunk or towards the center of a large, shrub. So lots of dark shadows as you get into the inside, and that's what's done here. So excellent. This is a great example. If you're a new artist or you're starting out, this is something to take note of, and you could even use this as examples, or something to sort of train yourself on a good way to do foliage. So just wanted to point that out, because I see that's the kind of thing I see people miss, or kind of just they'll spend all their time drawing an amazing Doc Ock and the henchmen and all the details and the shading and the rendering, and then they just kind of go blah 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 blah, and there's a blobby tree behind them. And it's, no, take your time, put the energy into your environment. It will pay off. As I said, here, this is another example of the sort of muddy inks. I'm not going to spend as much time on it, but you can see, like, this shadow on Doc Ock's under his face is supposed to have some sort of line work in it with color underneath, and the lines are almost all filled in with the ink. And look how thick this outline is. Now, I like it when the foreground elements have a darker outline, but this is really, really heavy. And it just appears like we've lost a lot of fidelity in terms of the line use, or the space between lines. Again, almost like the black ink line was overprinted. And so I think that's probably the case. And then, so I like most of this. I like how Doc Ock's arms are always flowing around. That's another thing. We haven't really talked about it through this story arc, but I like the way John Romita does it. His arms are never just stationary. They're moving. There's one going this way, that way. That's really nice. Keeps them sort of this weird floating arm, metallic arm, like they have a mind of their own, which is great. Up to this last image, this one I did not like as much. So one, Doc Ock's had enough. He hits him with his arm, and this reaction of Spidey is stiff. So again, let me go back real quick just to point out the difference. So bear with me here. They're fighting. Doc Ock hits Spidey with an arm, and look at this reaction to the hit. He's off his feet. He's bent backwards, flying over, arms outstretched. Nice arc to the body to follow the energy of the strike, right? And this one, he's just very stiff. That arm is to the side. The other arm must be at his side because we don't see it behind him or in front of him. The legs are super stiff. The neck is the head is turned, but the back is barely turned or bent, which makes you feel like the hit is not as strong, even though in the next panel, Spidey's down on his keister. So it's knocked him all the way off his feet and away from Doc Ock, because you can see how much further apart they are now, but we don't sell it in the reaction of this hit. So I didn't really care for that as much. This one didn't work for me. This is very, very good. This page is awesome. This is one of the best pages in the book. Now, I will say, again, we talked about it, the 180 rule. Now, in this case, Spidey is on the left. Doc Ock has the canister in his right hand. So when Spidey leaps again, we're still on this side. We're to Spidey's right, Doc Ock's left. The camera is slightly to that side, and that's what we see as Spidey leaps forward. This is phenomenal. The arms coming at us, so we have the perspective of the arms getting larger. There's foreshortening with the circles as it comes towards us. The figure of Spidey is awesome as he's landing on his, like I said, on his keister from the hit. We have the nice low angle, which makes Doc Ock look even more menacing. I mean, the shading, great. This, as he's leaping through and the tentacles wrap around and Spidey leaps through the tentacles to get his hands on Doc Ock around his, his neck, his collar there, and slams him back into the machines. Awesome action. I even like the action lines. I'm not a big fan of some of the action lines, but this is great. Just a terrific pose. The shading on the arms is phenomenal. Really helps sell the dimensionality that they're round, circular, or I guess cylindrical objects that are curling around Spidey. Just awesome. Great panel. Now, this is well drawn. Again, another great low angle coming up as Doc Ock has Spidey and lifts him off the ground. We have now once again broken the 180 rule, but here it makes there's no purpose for it. Spidey is moving left to right, and now all of a sudden he is on the right-hand side because we have flipped from being on the left. This is Doc Ock's left hand. Now we're towards the right side of him because we're closer to his right hand that's holding the canister. So we've broken the 180 rule. Now, you could say it is to move us off the page to the next, but this is a page turn. And it doesn't matter because if we go from right to left here, and in the next scene, if we took this image and flipped it, because the two characters are linked with Doc Ock's arms, you would still move from Spidey being held. So now he grabbed him and Doc Ock tightened the arms around him. Now he's held up. The arms would lead us to Doc Ock, and this foot actually would take us off the bottom left corner of the panel, or right corner of the panel, which is exactly where you want to be to flip the page. So I would argue that this would be better flipped, actually, because it would move us and move the eye through the page better than it does this way. So that's my opinion on that one. Your mileage may vary. Now, at least, again, there's more. I'm not going to go back into it, but there is more of the 180 rules going on. But now they're going to get into some more fighting. Spidey's had enough, even though he can't remember who he is. The two of them, he's only going to get pushed around so far. So, okay, this page is not as good. Like, this is top notch. I mean, like I said, this is probably the best page in the book. Like, if you were going to buy the original art from this, if it was available, this is the page you want. This is amazing. This one, a lot of wide shots, where, again, when I say wide shots, that means we, the viewer, are far away. And that's because they're small panels and we need to see the whole thing. We need to see how he's webbed his feet. We need to see how he's flipping out of the way of the arms. And it's just not terrific. I've said this a bunch in different videos. Oh yeah, and again, Spidey only using the one finger on his web shooters. Interesting. I had not noticed that before. Maybe it's happened in the past issue. I'll have to go back and look. I hadn't noticed that. But here, Spidey is kind of standing on this bottom border. That flattens that out. It helps to eliminate the depth that you see. I don't care for it. This is nice framing of the guy, the one henchman here who hears some noise. So he's watching this fight and turns over his shoulder menacingly. That's a nice framing device of the two fighting in the background. Now, they go to the window. Here's the military coming in their helicopter. We saw them before. They were, John Jameson was loading everybody up and into a helicopter. So they look, aha, there was a helicopter. Here's my problem with this. This window is not established in the previous pages. So if we go back, I actually went back to look at it. So there's a porch, and they're on the porch, and then Spidey lands. I guess maybe this is the window, but they go from on the porch to they're arguing. Doc Ock punches him. Now all of a sudden they're in the lab, breaking equipment and stuff. So I guess this is like a patio door, maybe like that kind of a thing. So they're walking inside. But again, not established. At no point have we seen like, hey, in this room where they're fighting, there's a big window. And now all of a sudden they turn and there's a big window that's covered by blinds, or not really. He sort of pulls them back, but I didn't like it. There's ways to do that where you could have established. It just goes to show that from here forward, there's very little other than this little bit of, equipment, lab equipment stuff that they're breaking. There's very little to establish the environment, especially here. A couple of walls, that's it. So it would have been nice to maybe set that environment that they're fighting in and show that there's a big window. So that way, when the reveal is, oh, there's a big helicopter at the window, they could, it makes sense. Let's see here. Yeah, never really established the window. Yeah. This is great. Nice hatching. So I'll zoom in. You can see, again, we saw this a couple issues ago. The military has used smoke grenades, just like Doc Ock has used a bunch of them. And because they're looking through the smoke to see him, you see this shadow, and it's done with cross hatching. And I think that's a really nice technique to do it. Today, we do it with more computer coloring. You could draw that figure and use layers over, semi-transparent layers over the top in Photoshop to blur it out. But I think this is a great solution for the time, and I like it. And while Doc Ock is fighting everybody, Colonel Jameson, Jonah's son, gets the idea, hey, I'm going to use the nullifier because the nullifier can do anything you want it to do. It can make guns not work. It makes cars not work. And in this case, it makes Dr. Octopus's arms not work, which at that point finally makes sense, I guess. It doesn't with the original intent of the nullifier, but the way they've used it in the past makes sense. And you go, hey, finally, good idea. Good job, Colonel. You got a good plan. I didn't care for this. So there's all kinds of smoke in the room. They're trying to see. You see Doc Ock. His feet are covered, right? There's layers of the smoke. This guy's standing on it. I would have liked to see this foot covered with smoke. And then Spidey is apparently stuck to a wall, which we see here as the smoke clears up above some, but there's smoke behind him. So he's just sort of hanging in the air. It wouldn't have been a big deal to do the same thing you did up above, which is draw the silhouette of Spidey and hatch it out with this cross hatching to show that he's behind in the smoke. That would have been a real easy way to do it. So nice head here. This is great Spider-Man head. I like the nice dark outline, the jawline here, that shape. So you see the back of the skull. It's very easy. People will often just sort of make it more of a circle. But this is actually a nice shape to the head underneath the mask. So that's a really good Spidey head. And of course, is he going to listen to Doc Ock and be his lackey? Now, this image of Spidey striding forward, I said to me looks weird, and I'll explain why. So he's striding forward, supposedly menacing, right? We see his hands. The hands look a little small. I say that because the way the arms are bent, the hands are coming forward. His hands are closer to us, even though it's only slightly. The hands could be a little bit bigger, especially in comparison to like the head. Now, the other part is the arms are bent. This arm is slightly behind his pec and chest. So that means that shoulder's slightly back and the bend is in the elbow, and the other arm would be coming forward. But the shoulders are almost perfectly square. This shoulder should be further back. This shoulder should be slightly forward to give you more of that menacing, he's coming at you, muscles, if you will, shoulder muscle first, right? Hand first. There's very little twist to the torso, but it's trying to portray that in the arms, and it doesn't sell it because the rest of the body doesn't follow. Same with the waist. So this leg is forward, this leg is shadowed and smaller to show that it's going back into space. But the hips aren't really twisted because the belt is perfectly square. It's straight down the center of his torso, and wraps around evenly around the middle. If you want to do this, you would take this costume, you would pull it to the right, you would have this leg be slightly over so that the center of his waist, his pelvis is turned, and you would have less hip here. His center line would be more to our right that way, and that would put this leg maybe coming even over to the right a little bit as he's striding. So again, what you're trying to do is when somebody is walking like that, their shoulders and their hips are going to alternate. So if you're walking, your right shoulder's forward, your left, you could feel it, your left hip would come forward, your right hip would go back, vice versa. That's how you move. It's how you counterbalance yourself. And here we're not seeing it. It's very stiff, but they're trying to show the movement, and it's just not working for me. And then, of course, Spidey comes to his senses and goes, listen, I don't know who I am. I don't know what happened, but I know I'm not working with Doc Ock. He is a jerk. And they go, okay, great. So then the military there to arrest him, and they're like, hey, if you're going to arrest me, you got to arrest Spider-Man too. And they're like, okay, come on, you got to come with us. We can do what we can. We'll help you out. And Spidey's like, nope. I know I'm not getting locked up. I don't know who I am. I'm out of here. And he takes off. And that's kind of it. There's not much here. He doesn't recognize what his face is. He doesn't know who he is. He's just sort of sitting there. He's a dude. He's a young guy named Spider-Man. And that's all he knows about himself. And we see next, we're going to see Kazar. So if you're not familiar with Kazar, Kazar is a character that had his own book at times. He's been involved with the X-Men a lot in the Savage Land. And so we will get to see Kazar for the first time in Spider-Man. He's kind of a Tarzan-y kind of analog for Marvel, if you will. So that'll be a lot of fun. And there you go. There's the book. So we're going to cut back over to the desk and we'll wrap things up. All right, so there we go. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 56. It is the end of the Doc Ock story saga, or the return of Doc Ock. We'll see Doc Ock again, trust me. Good story, great conclusion. We're left with the cliffhanger where it's not all resolved, right? Spidey still has amnesia. His family and friends don't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. And we're going to continue. So I like that part of it. We've resolved the Doc Ock part. We've resolved the Nullifier storyline, but we still are, we're still continuing with an ongoing saga. So that's nice. Overall, in terms of a rating, I would give this issue I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's good. There's some great action. Like I said, I kept pointing to that page that I thought was the best one in the book. There's some other things that are a little, there's some stiff figures. There's looks like some printing issues, like I said, with those muddy inks. But overall, it's good. And I enjoyed the read. It's something I hadn't read in quite some time, so it was fun to go back and look at. And there's some great stuff for for you to look at. So again, if you're a new artist or a younger artist looking to learn, there's some great examples of stuff that you can learn from in there. Some great fundamentals when it comes to story illustration. So I hope you enjoyed the book as well. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I always appreciate it. Do not forget, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's just a click of the button. It's perfectly free, and it puts you in the running to win not one, but 2 pieces of original art when we reach the 1,000 subscriber mark. So thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you here next week with more Spider-Man. Thanks.